little flame, now get out the way. Whole lot of change, still been the same, put that on the name. I had to go through it just to get to it, look what I became. Elevate, level up, way to the top.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Star Motivates You. I'm Glenda Baker, along with my hosts, Joshua Jones and Star Singletary.
Hey.
We'd like to take this time to thank our sponsor, Best Buy, for proudly sponsoring us. Tonight, we have on the show Rafe Carlson, upcoming rising superstar in the country music field. Thanks for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. Been looking forward to it for a while.
And we're looking forward to it.
All right, Rafe. My first question is tell us a little about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, I'm from just a little bit north of Duluth, Minnesota. If you've ever been up to Minnesota, it's pretty close to God's country. I mean, the northeast part of the state, so the little, I grew up hunting and fishing and working out in the woods. So, very few people, lots of wilderness, lots of trees and just wildlife. And that was kind of my life, up until the point where I went to Nashville. And so, I grew up, went to high school just outside of Duluth in a small town called Hermantown.
Mm-hmm.
And, when I graduated, I got in a couple of sales jobs here and there. And eventually I knew I wanted to do music. I didn't know how to do music, and I knew I wanted to do it. And so I put in my 2 weeks notice one day to a place I've been working for 3 years. It was a really good job. I got it pretty close to right out of high school. And I was only about 22 years old. And my boss said, "You're really going to try to go do music for a living?" He's like, "You've never played a show. You've never sang in front of people. You've never done any of this stuff." And it was a tough job to get. And it was a good job. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm going to try it." And, gave my 2 weeks notice and left my job. I flew to Nashville about a week later. And then I started booking shows, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't even know you could make money doing it, but I just figured I'd learn how. And so started going to Nashville and spending my winters down there and my summers up in the Midwest. And one thing led to another. I recorded some music with some real big dogs down there in Tennessee and started just performing at festivals and fairs, and it grew and grew and grew to the point now where we're touring, 5 months out of the year, playing festivals and fairs and stuff and doing the thing. So it's definitely there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat, and a lot of people are trying to do that social media, Spotify streams, TikTok dances sort of thing. And we've kind of came at it from a way that's maybe a little more old school, but we're just touring, we're hitting the road, and we're trying to just make good music,
That's good. How did you get started in music? Like, what motivated you to get started in the music?
Well, I grew up listening to my mom. My mom was in bands her whole life up until probably around the time she met my dad. He kind of put the stop for that. But she was in country bands and rock bands and everything back in the day in the 70s and the 80s. And my cousins were in rock bands when I was growing up. My older cousins both play guitar, and they're insane musicians. They're phenomenal guitar players. And I grew up watching them when I was 9, 10, 11 years old on the stage playing in rock bands. And that's what made me pick up a guitar when I was about 13. And taught myself how to play guitar over the span of a few years. I was still afraid to sing in front of people. That's something that you never, you can't get over that until you just start doing it. And but yeah, we really came from a family. I came from a family of music, and I would say there's more musical people in my family than non-musical people. It's a lot of musicians.
Tell us what artist had the most influence on you in your career?
The most influence on me is without a doubt Chris Stapleton. And there's a handful of others like Chris Cornell and Bob Seger and, Leonard Skinner, all of Leonard Skinner, and, Audio Slave, Blackstone Cherry, even Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. But Chris Stapleton, I remember when I was probably 16 years old. I don't know if any of y'all listen to Chris Stapleton at all, but he put out an album back in in 2015, I believe, called Traveler. And I don't know how many awards it's won. It's one of the greatest country albums of all time, as far as I'm concerned. But I was on the lake at my uncle's cabin up on Island Lake, just north of Duluth. I was playing frisbee with a couple of my cousins, and I remember the radio was on, and my aunt, you know, she at the time she was always on the cutting edge of everything country, and at that time I was listening to Slipknot and Korn. Oh man, I was listening to Metallica and Lamb of God and Meshuggah and everything, and I was not listening to country at all. I grew up listening to country, but then I got my teenage angst phase, you know,
Right.
got that out of me. But I remember a song came on the radio, and it was Parachute by Chris Stapleton. And I was listening, you know, country radio at that time was Florida Georgia Line. And, you know, all the stuff that, you know, kind of the bro country stuff was really big then. And that's fine. And that stuff's not bad, but, you know, there's a time and place for that sort of thing. I was never into it back then. But I remember Parachute came on, and I was playing frisbee, and I stopped what I was doing. I was like, I couldn't even believe it. I've never heard someone sing like that. And I sang, nobody ever heard me sing at that point, but I sang in my bedroom by myself and, you know, just played stuff and sang along in the car. That was probably right around the time I got my driver's license. But I said, Aunt Michelle, who is this guy singing? She's like, you don't know who this is? This is Chris Stapleton. And that probably changed my life for real. I mean, I thought if somebody can make this kind of music and have their songs on the radio, then I can do it too. And I went and saw him in 2017. He came to Duluth at AMSOIL Arena. And that was probably the most impactful concert I ever went to. I saw him. I mean, I've seen all kinds of hard rock and heavy metal bands, like just the most mind-blowing performances you could imagine, like pyrotechnics and explosions and fire and just cool stuff. When I was growing up, I tried to go to every metal show. And Chris Stapleton up there, just with a guitar, and his wife, you know, and his little stand-up bass and his little band he's got, that was probably one of, if not the best concerts I've ever seen. And that probably changed as far as influences go, he's hands down the biggest influence for me.
Okay.
You're currently on tour right now, right?
Yes, sir.
What's your next city?
Next city's this Friday. We're going to be in Mason, Wisconsin at Concert in the Corn. It's a festival. We're going to be with Dustin Lynch, Justin Moore, Joe Nichols, I think Jody Messina, Daryl Worley, Eddie Montgomery, Sarah Evans, and a handful more. It's a bunch of country artists. Big concert in a big cornfield. It's a lot of fun. A lot of rowdy Wisconsinites. It's a good time.
Okay. And who are some of the musicians that you had the privilege to work with?
Oh man. So many. The first song I ever co-wrote in Nashville, I wrote with Tim Rushlow, who is the lead singer of Little Texas. So he's the voice of God Bless Texas and Kick a Little, Amy's Back in Austin, what might have been like all these the biggest, you know, 90s country band hits. And this is my first week in Nashville. I just wound up in his living room through a friend of a friend, my good buddy Jeff, my producer, and we wrote a song, and it was just total culture shock because I'd never written. Now I co-write all the time. When I'm down there, I write every day, and when I'm on tour, I try to write at least once a week on Zoom. But man, Tim Rushlow, and I've collaborated with all kinds of great players, maybe people who you might not know, but some of the most iconic studio cats in Nashville. I mean, Wes Little, Evan Hutchins, you know, some of the best players. I'm trying to think, but yeah, the best of the best when it comes to players like guitar, drums, bass. Rob McNeely, you know, John Conley. But as far as artists, you know, I've written music with a lot of the big country artists and a lot of the big country songwriters. And that's been a cool thing because you kind of, you sit down with these people that live in Nashville and they eat, sleep, and breathe Nashville. The whole world, their world is Nashville. And then they get out on the road and they tour for a couple weeks and they go back. So my whole thing is I go to Nashville when I need to, and I love Nashville. It's got a place in my heart, but I like being on the road. I like being up north. We primarily tour in the Midwest, and we've got fans up here. So when we're on the road, we're playing festivals, people wearing our shirts in the front row, singing along to our songs. And so I go to Nashville to write and record. I don't live there. I'll spend a few months there a year, but I don't live there full time.
Right.
And so when I go to Nashville, I'm writing with these people that are, big shot artists, big shot songwriters. I think a lot of times I'm able to provide kind of a, because Nashville can be a little bit of an echo chamber in the sense that everybody's there, they're all writing, they're all making music, but everybody's doing and saying and thinking the same things because it's just a kind of little world. And so when I come in, just fresh and different experiences, I've had a lot of success in songwriting and just in partnerships and collaborations with people just because my experience and where I'm coming from is so different, being from Minnesota, and just the life I've lived is different than, the people that kind of get into that Nashville thing. And I'm not bashing that. I love Nashville. It's just at this point in my career, it's not for me to live there full time. But I think that's the cool thing about songwriting is everybody can come together with totally different experiences and make something that's totally its own thing.
So you said you enjoy collaborating. Do you also like to write your own songs as well?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I mean, songwriting and co-writing are two completely different things. And you sit down to write a song with other people, just kind of the name of the game in Nashville. I mean, there's very few situations where a song is going to be on the radio or hit number one that just one person wrote. I mean, that's almost unheard of unless it's like a Chris Stapleton deal or something like that. But it's mostly people sitting down in an office, and it's very, very systematic. It's very controlled, and that's fine. I mean, there's an art to that. There's an art to doing the co-writing thing, and I know people I have friends that are maybe not the best songwriters, but they're excellent co-writers, and they're good at working with other people and getting the good stuff out of the other songwriters in the room. And that's a skill in and of itself. And I love co-writing. I also love just writing by myself. And when I'm on the road, I am really bad at making time for that, and I wish I did more, and I need to. Just because we're kind of we're on the road, we're playing festivals, we're in the bus or in the rig with the band, and it's just a 24/7 party all the time. So it's hard to make time to sit down and write a song when I'm not necessarily in a creative mode. When I'm going out, we're playing for thousands of people, and then we're going back, and then we're hitting the bars, and we're going out and having fun and meeting up with people. It's just like I'm in a live in the moment mode. I'm not really in like an introspective sit down and write a song mode. Right. When I go to Nashville, that kind of comes out, and I really do like co-writing. It's just it's a different thing than writing a song on your own. And all the songs I have out on Spotify and Apple Music right now actually were songs I wrote a long time ago. There's kind of that lag effect of releasing music where you write the song and then you take it to the studio and then you get it mixed and mastered and fully produced, and you get it to the distributor, and then you maybe do a photo shoot and a video shoot, and you get all your assets ready to put it out. And then it finally comes out. Well, that could be a couple months, that could be several years between writing a song and it actually coming out. And so I've got stuff out right now on Apple Music and Spotify that I wrote 3-4 years ago. So most of the stuff I have out, I just wrote on my own. There's one, the song Just Can't Explain is the one I wrote with Tim Rushlow from Little Texas. That's the only song I have out that I co-wrote. Everything else I wrote on my own. So I've got dozens, if not hundreds of songs that I've co-written with some of the best writers in Nashville, just kind of waiting to get recorded and waiting to get put out, or waiting to get recorded by somebody else.
So what do you enjoy doing when you are not performing? Like, besides like going to bars or whatnot, what else do you do?
That's a good question.
Uh,
Um, man, I used to disc golf all the time. You guys ever disc golf?
No.
no.
What is
Nah,
that?
It's like golf with a frisbee.
Oh, I know what you're
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So you count your strokes basically.
Oh.
And you throw it into a little basket, and that's really fun. I did that when I had more time, where I would, I was on the road solo for a long time without a band, and I would go out and I'd get to a city, and I have a couple hours to kill, and so I'd go find a park that had disc golf in it, and I'd disc golf for a while, and then I'd go on. This is some weird stuff, but for a long time I didn't even like shower. I would just shower in rivers and lakes and stuff, and I basically just sit out on my vehicle, and I would just play. Like I would literally hit the road. I go disc golf, maybe hit a bar, maybe meet up with some friends, then take my backpack with my soap and my toothbrush and everything, jump in a lake, jump in a river in this, and I'm touring the Midwest. I mean, it's like there's lakes and rivers and just wilderness and beautiful places everywhere. So I'm like, okay, I'm driving. Oh, that's a cool lake. Jump in the lake, take a shower, throw some clothes on, be on stage 45 minutes later, ready to rock. And that was a lot of fun. Now, that it's all the business thing. We've done very well. We've grown it into something that any free time I have when I'm not performing is spent on the business and booking and working with, brand partnerships and endorsements and, working on brand building and social media and Spotify and all these different things. And so that takes pretty much all my time. So my free time's severely limited. I mean, it used to be a lot more. I used to make time for jumping in lakes and stuff like that, but I don't have as much anymore.
Okay.
Sorry, that was TMI.
Oh, you're fine. Would you ever think about doing an album with Luke Bryan or Luke Combs?
Sure, I would love to. Yeah, give me a ring. Call me up. I'll do it.
I heard about it.
Chris Stapleton.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Any of those guys. I mean, the first day I was in Nashville, I flew in. My producer picked me up. It was actually the second day because I flew in at like 7 p.m. He picked me up. We did a tour up and down Broadway. He showed me all around town. Next morning, I woke up. We were going to the studio, not to record anything. He was going to show me around. It was where it was going to be recording in a couple weeks. And I walked right into a Luke Combs session. So I opened the door of the studio. And he's like, okay, that's the front stage up there. That's the backstage. Soundstage Studios is where I record most of my stuff in Nashville. And he was like, here's backstage. We're going to be recording up front stage. So there's the control room. And I didn't know there's anything going on. So I opened the door to the control room, and I'm 5 feet away from Luke Combs. And I'm just a freaking Minnesota boy. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, literally, I've never been to Nashville. I've never recorded a song. I've never even really written a song. So I'm just looking at Luke Combs. He just kind of waves at me. And I'm just like, oh, hey, shut the door. I just didn't know what was going on. But that's the kind of town Nashville is. A small town. Everybody knows everybody. So I would love to record some music with those guys. I'm just, they probably look at me like somebody who hasn't done enough ass shaking TikTok dances yet to, I just try to do, I'm just out here on the road and I'm trying to make loud, badass rock and roll country music. And I think these days, I'm not going to get into a rant, but people kind of just look at you as how many followers you have, how many streams you have, and you can measure a fan base in a whole lot of different ways. And it's not necessarily all just on the surface level of the internet. Like when I go to a show and there's a couple hundred people wearing my name on their shirt, singing along to songs I haven't even put out yet. Yeah, I might not have as many followers as Spotify listeners, but I don't know. It's a different world. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
So tell us what inspires you to write some of the songs you write.
Lately, I haven't been writing as much, but usually when I sit down to write a song, and it's totally my own creative control, I tend to write songs that nod toward growing up in the woods and growing up in Minnesota where it's cold and it's rough and it's a harsh climate. People are tough. And people are tough up here, and I think toughness is probably like a major theme of my music, and individualism and purpose. And I think like putting that into music is not something a lot of people have done lately. You got Leonard Skinner and you got like these, Molly Hatchet, these Southern rock bands from the 70s, but it really hasn't been done since then. I mean, we kind of fall along the lines of Southern rock, but we're from one of the most northern parts of the country, not counting Alaska. So we're kind of northern rock in that sense. It's a very rock influenced sound and country. But yeah, as far as like where the lyrical inspiration comes from, it's usually from my life experience, which has been, I didn't know this until I started meeting people from the cities and Nashville and Minneapolis and Chicago. But it's been just growing up tough, growing up being able to take care of things and fix stuff and build stuff and work with your hands. And I think that's kind of something that people sing about a lot on country radio, but I'm not sure if they're doing much of it. Who knows? Maybe.
What was
What
your
inspired you? What was your inspiration behind your song "Big City Lights"?
What's that?
What was the inspiration behind "Big City Lights"? Your song.
Big City Lights. That was an interesting one because a lot of the stuff that I'm gearing up to put out is co-written stuff. So, I'm getting people that are way more talented than I am when it comes to songwriting, and I'm working with these people that are phenomenal songwriters. That's the stuff I want to be putting out, because the stuff I write on my own, I typically just I go on a rant, or I go on tangents, or I get into a kind of a, when you write with someone else, they kind of reel you back in, and I'm like, let's do this thing, and they're like, hang on, no, probably they won't play that on the radio. So usually the stuff I write on my own doesn't make it too far. But Big City Lights I wrote totally on my own, and that was one. I was living in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably March, and I've been down there for 4 months or so, and I miss the woods, and I miss the wilderness, and I miss being home where you could look up and see the stars at night. And I was surrounded by concrete and big city. And that's, for some people, it's not for me. Like, I love Nashville, but I'm not a big fan of living in the city. And that was kind of wearing on me, and it was wearing me down. And so when I wrote that song, about, I still got that 4-wheel drive, we can take it for a ride if you ever get tired of the big city. You're singing it to a girl that left for the big city for college or for work or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I wrote that song in a way, kind of singing it to myself, like, it deep down wanting to get back to the woods. That's where I grew up, and it's definitely something I think not talked about a lot in music, because I think there's a lot of people from the country and a lot of people from the South, and they moved to Nashville, but there's something special about the Great North Woods. If you've ever been to northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, Michigan, the UP of Michigan, it's just this kind of, I know they got out obviously in Alaska and Maine and Washington, Oregon, but it's just this feel of being in the wilderness and being in the woods and on a lake that's not full of cabins and bars and restaurants, and just on a lake that's just a lake, and you're like out there alone. So that was the inspiration for that song, just growing up in the woods and like having that as part of my heart.
Okay.
Do you ever get nervous when you perform in a new city?
No, I get more nervous doing like stripped down shows, like intimate stuff where it's just me and a guitar, and there's like 40 people there. Yeah. And they're all like just listening. Or I've done like showcases in Nashville where there's been like heads of record labels and A&R people and industry people there, and I get nervous for stuff like that where it's a smaller crowd but they're all really listening.
Right.
I can get up, I mean, this summer every weekend, we get up in front of thousands of people, and you're walking up the steps to the stage, you're putting your ears in, throwing your guitar on, kind of just a switch flips. You kind of just enter a different, kind of become a different person for a little while. But when you're like in that really intimate setting with people that you know are really judging you, then I've gotten nervous in situations like that for sure. But no, when I'm on stage rocking and rolling, I don't get nervous. I'm just like ready to go every time.
So you told us how much you like Chris Stapleton. If you had to pick 4 or 5 other singers, who would you choose to work with?
Well, I'd love to pick Chris Cornell. He unfortunately passed away not too long ago. Rest in peace. 2017, I believe. But yeah, as far as other inspirational people for me, I mean, Bob Seger. I don't know what he's doing nowadays. I haven't kept tabs on him. I'm sure he's still out kicking. But yeah, as far as working on a project, you know, I think there's a lot of really cool stuff happening in country right now. I don't know if any of y'all heard of the Red Clay Strays. They're a band that's doing some cool stuff. It'd be cool to work with them.
That would be great.
Really, and you know, the thing is with a lot of these people that I grew up listening to, I mean, half of them are dead. You know, I grew up listening to stuff that was out in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Mainly the 70s. That was kind of my decade of stuff I really liked, like Skinner, Allman Brothers, CCR, ZZ Top, Fleetwood Mac. And, you know, and I think the last remaining original member of Skinner just passed away. But, you know, if I'm going to name a few people that would be cool to work with, I mean, I think it'd be cool to do something with Red Clay Strays. I like what Zach Bryan is doing in terms of just making stuff that's raw, and I think that's raw and real, and that's what people are responding to nowadays. There's so much fake stuff out there. You got AI, you don't know what's real and what's not. And here's a guy that's singing, you know, maybe not entirely in key all the time, and that's kind of his thing. It's just like, here it is. I recorded this in my bedroom. It's like, I think that's kind of the thing people are responding to. I think it'd be cool to work with him, any of those guys that are doing that raw, that authentic thing. 49 Winchester is great. Noah Kahan is cool. You know, there's these, but as far as myself and my band and our sound, what I've found is that there's not a whole lot of artists and bands that are kind of doing what we're doing in the sense of like rock and roll. Because you got Zach Bryan doing the raw thing, but it's very folksy and it's very, you know, it's kind of sad songs. It's introspective and that's cool. And I like listening to this stuff. But we're like, you know, my guitar players have amps that were built in the 60s that if you turn it up, it's like the volume dial goes to 12. And if you turn it up past 2, it's too loud. And we turn it up to like 8. So we're loud, we rock out. And that's kind of a thing that like, I think hasn't been really cool since like maybe the 80s. I don't know. But we're doing that and people, it's kind of a throwback for people. They're at shows and it's loud and it's rocking and it's in your face. But it's raw, kind of like the Zach Bryan thing. But it's not the kind of quiet bedroom country thing. It's the rock, roll, southern rock, country in your face, Skinner type of thing. It's got some attitude. So that's kind of what we've been doing and people like it.
Yeah. You guys definitely have that's what drew us to you all when we found you, was your whole rock and roll. It was different from anything else that we'd heard out there, and that's what drew us to you, to have you on the show.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely, it's not for everybody, you know. I mean, I think there's a quote, and I think it was actually I gotta remember now, who was it? It was actually Rick Rubin, I think. So like one of the greatest producers of all time. He said, if you put out a record that everybody likes, you made a terrible record. Like, unless you can make something that splits people. I mean, look at like politics. Look at all this. Look at everything. Anyone that's doing something cool, anybody that's doing something that's worth doing or doing something interesting, you got half the people that absolutely love it, and half the people that absolutely hate it. And if you're in the middle where everyone's kind of like, oh, that's fine. I think that's a lot of the stuff that's on the radio nowadays. People are just like, oh, cool. Yeah, it gets stuck in my head when I'm driving my Chrysler Pacifica to work. It's like,
Right.
fine. Okay, cool. Nobody's going to remember you in 20 years. So you make something that splits people. And that's what we're trying to do. Like we're not trying to, that's not the goal. We're just trying to make great music. But, some people like it, some people don't. And we're just trying to make the best music we can.
That's good. That's what's up.
You got any favorite NFL teams or NBA teams or favorite players?
I'm from Minnesota. I'm rooting for all the Minnesota teams, and I I wish I had more time. If I did, I'd probably watch sports. I really don't have much time to watch sports, and I haven't watched sports in a long time just because I wake up and I work and then I go to bed. So, but if I did have more time, I'd probably be a little more invested. And I did watch the Minneapolis Miracle back, was that 2018 or was it 2017 or so, when Stephon Diggs threw that crazy pass, or no, he caught the pass.
Yeah, that was right.
And then
right at time.
The biggest comeback in like NFL history. We thought they were going to the Super Bowl and they didn't. But the Vikings, being a Vikings fan is always a letdown, it feels like. But yeah, I don't watch a whole lot of sports, but I know a lot of my friends do, and it's fun if the Vikings make it kind of far. It's cool to watch them in the playoffs if they make it there. So yeah.
Could you give any encouraging advice or into independent music artists or anybody out there?
For sure, yeah. I would say, as much as it sucks and as much as I hate it, social media is a free way to promote yourself that wasn't around 15, 20, 30 years ago. And it's a good tool to have in your toolkit to be able to be good at social media. It seems like these days it's more important than everything else, and I don't agree with that. But I think it's important to be good at marketing and be good at portraying yourself in the best light and putting your best foot forward on the internet. And I think social media is a really easy way, and an easy and free way to get yourself out there. As long as you've got a camera or a phone, you can record yourself and you can post it. You don't have to pay a subscription to post stuff on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. So I would say start posting on social media. You might attract the attention of somebody, but stay consistent. And as far as the music is concerned, just start writing all the time. Because people have heard Wagon Wheel and Friends in Low Places enough, and they want, most people want to hear covers, but everybody wants that next big thing. Look at Morgan Wallen, Zach Bryan, all these people that come out. Like, people want that new thing. And if you spend 5-10 years writing and writing and writing and writing and writing every day, you're gonna create a thing that hasn't been created before, because you have only your own unique experience. And if you're just honing that in, you're going to create something cool that people want to hear, I think. So you just have to practice writing, and you have to practice being in front of a camera and working on social media. I think those are the two biggest things.
Well, we'd like to thank you so much, Rafe, for being on the show tonight. We hope everyone will go check out your song Lost and Found, Big City Lights, Just Can't Explain. Where can they find that again?
It's all out there on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, and everything. And then we're on Instagram and Facebook and everything. It's at Rafe Carlson, like safe with an R, R-A-F-E Carlson, pretty much everything.
C-A-R-L-S-O-N, right?
That's right.
All right. Yes, please, everyone. Go check out his albums, buy his merchandise. We're really grateful that you were on the show tonight. We know that you're going to do big things in country music.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I could make it out, and thank you for reaching out. It was fun.
No, you're more than welcome. We'd like to take this opportunity again to thank Best Buy for proudly sponsoring our show, and we hope you guys will tune in again next week Sunday at 7:30 for our next episode. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
We ain't the same. Get in your lane, stay in your lane. Wait, this ain't a game. Been through the flame, now get out the way. Whole lot of change. Still been the same, put that on the name. I had to go through it just to get to it. Look what I became. Elevate, level up, way to the top, headed to the peak.